This opening is wild, and can you guess that it was Rent a Girlfriend? Ayo guys, we need to talk about Rent a Girlfriend Season 4 opening. If you haven't seen it yet, pause this, go watch it and come right back. Trust me, there is things to unpack here. And for the anime onlys, this is your warning because I will be talking about the most recent manga events, so you have been warned. Because it's really crazy how perfectly it drops alongside the manga, right after chapter 382, where Chizuru says being with Kazuya feels like a storybook, and bam, we get an opening that looks like Disney just exploded on the screen. Straight up Fantasyland vibes if you've ever been to Disneyland, and I'm also talking about the Storybook Land canal boats. I know a lot of people aren't fans of Disney or Disneyland, but I've been there a lot, and I've been to Tokyo Disneyland, and it's really nice out there, so I'm just gonna throw this out there. And let's talk about the intro to the opening, because we just got like the perfect wallpapers for your best girl. And as you can tell, we're gonna start with each girl and their fairy tale icon. Ruka as Snow White, Mami as Cinderella, I guess. I don't know, we have to unpack this one. Sumi as Little Red Riding Hood, Minnie looks straight up like Alice in Wonderland, and Chizuru, I'm not exactly sure about her. She might be Rapunzel, but she doesn't have the long hair, but she is locked on the tower. Maybe we're getting some Shrek vibes and she might be Fiona or even Aurora, but I'll get to that. She's definitely a damsel in distress or a princess in distress. She is locked up on this massive castle that's also very symbolic. It's not just fantasy, it represents how Chizuru's walled off her emotions. She's trapped not by a dragon, but by her own fears and emotions. I might be stretching, but I want to talk about the symbolism behind every girl and what princess they represent. So hear me out as I try to break this down. Ruka is Snow White. The theme in Snow White is vanity and youth, which doesn't directly fit Ruka. If anything, Chizuru is the one that's always represented as the breathtaking beauty, mature and graceful. So maybe this is just the visual reference, or maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe it's working in reverse here. Ruka does feel jealous of Chizuru, but not in a vain way. I don't think so myself, but I can see it, just worked in here somehow. But let me know what you guys think. Now, if we look over to Sumi as Little Red Riding Hood, now this one's interesting. Red Riding Hood is about the innocence, which would fit Sumi, but also about stranger danger, obedience, and deception. While Sumi fits the innocent part, but the themes of manipulation and danger feel more in line with Mami. But I'm not saying that Mami should be Little Red Riding Hood, instead she should be the big bad wolf, but these are definitely themes that run in Rent a Girlfriend. And then if we move over to Minnie, she is definitely Alice, and this one really works because Alice in Wonderland is about dreams versus reality, and Minnie, she's the one who pushes Kazuya to chase his dream girl Chizuru, which makes perfect sense to me. And of course there's the theme of just being yourself in Alice in Wonderland, which is of course another thing that Minnie always tells Kazuya to be, is just to be yourself. And now we got Mami, little Mami as Cinderella, and this is where things get kind of juicy because Cinderella is about kindness being rewarded at the end of the story, but Mami, she is quite the opposite of that. She is manipulative, bitter, and kind of evil. Definitely not the good girl who should win at the end of this story. The casting is ironic here, and I think it's intentional. I don't even think if we put into consideration, if we put in Mami's flashback, that, this makes any sense, but I do think it's a bait and switch, and we'll soon see why. And then finally, we have Chizuru, and unfortunately, you can correct me in the comments, but I don't think there's a princess that represents her, or at least she's representing a certain princess. I'm sorry, I must have messed that up. But I don't want to repeat myself, but she is basically the damsel in distress that needs to be rescued by our prince of this story, Kazuya. And then we see Kazuya running towards Chizuru, reflecting on their journey together. Both of them here are in rags, humbled, broken, and it's real because in reality, Chizuru isn't a princess. She had a lot of problems growing up. However, of course, she is beautiful, and there might be a king/prince who would like to make her his queen, which plays right into it like a fairy tale. There's a lot of Shrek energy here because Kazuya is out to stop a wedding. And along the way to rescue the princess, he encounters the girls. Ruka looks annoyed because of course he doesn't want her to save the princess. She's the one that's in love with him. Minnie looks intrigued. We got Sumi with the big bad wolf, Suzune, who's her little dog, who are ready to help. Ruka of course beats him up here because she wants to be the queen in his story, but then she gets distracted by Minnie feeding Suzune a tree, causing him to get gigantified. No clue on what this symbolizes, but it's fun. And then Grandma Nagomi and Fish-kun show up, and thank God we get to see Fish-kun in the opening. And they're supposed to represent the fairy godmother duo, but then they're dressed up like the evil queen from Snow White because they are there to help him out, but they also kind of roast him while doing it. They are there to get him ready for the rescue and even princify him up, but they do it in this like rag outfit, which of course we do see in the manga and the anime because his family is always kind of messed up in that kind of way. They always tell him to be the best man for Chizuru, but they're also like, hey, but it is Kazuya. Like, how did Kazuya even get her? I mean, Kazuya's gonna mess this up somehow. I might be wrong, but I really think that that's what that represents. And then I love this part, Fish-kun even becomes his noble steed. I really love this little touch here. And once he sets off, we also get to see who really supports Kazuya's mission and who's mad about it. Of course, it's Ruka. She's pissed that he's leaving, and I I just love her. She's so adorable. And then here's a small detail I did just notice in the fantasy depictions. Only Ruka, Chizuru, and Mami are framed as love interests with their respective stories. Sumi and Minnie, not romantic roles in their like stories. I mean, Little Red Riding Hood is not a romantic story, and you know, Alice in Wonderland is not a romantic story either. Maybe this is a little confirmation that the only real love interest in the story for Kazuya is Ruka, Chizuru, and then, you know, Mami in the shadows. I know some will say that Ruka doesn't count, but let's not forget that Kazuya almost nearly settled for her in the first season, only to break her heart, and I swear that, you know, sometimes the real villain of this story is Kazuya. But let's move this along because Kazuya finally reaches the castle, and the bride waiting here is not Chizuru. It's actually Cinderella running up the castle, and of course that's Mami, and this moment screams symbolism. Mami used to be the one for Kazuya, but when the glass slipper falls behind and it shatters, so do these old feelings for her. And then plot twist, Mami reveals herself as an evil ice queen with a dragon. I told you guys, there's no way that she could be Cinderella. She's not nice, she's evil. She's more like Maleficent meets Elsa on her villain arc. This one goes out to everyone in the comments that's always saying that Mami was right, she's actually the good person here. No, she is the villain. Because just like in the story, she blasts Kazuya away from Chizuru, and then the girls rush in to save him. And then shout out to Shun and Kibe for their blink and you'll miss it cameo. Seriously, like at full speed, it's so hard to catch. But in reality, the girls really wouldn't fight for him like this, at least not Ruka. Sumi has helped Kazuya get its feelings in check and becoming a better guy for her Chizuru, but she's been MIA in the story, but it is symbolic, because Ruka would never ever help Kazuya get any closer to Chizuru. But in the opening, we get to see her go toe-to-toe with Mami, just like in the Hawaiian's Paradise arc, where she refused to go along with Mami's twisted plans. Then Minnie turns into a giant and becomes Kazuya's helping hand, literally helping him rise after being knocked down. This is the most obvious visual metaphor for her emotional support throughout the story, especially in the upcoming arcs. And just like in chapter 382, Kazuya reaches Chizuru and brings light back into her world. He tears off the Kings of Rags outfit Nagomi gave him, symbolizing him shedding the image he thinks he needs to be. Just like in the story, he doesn't need to pretend to be a prince. Chizuru just wants an ordinary relationship where there's love and understanding. Kazuya gets it twisted because he sees Chizuru like this queen who deserves the world. This perfectly coincides with the most recent developments in the manga. Kazuya needs to be raw, honest, and himself, because this is the person that Chizuru is waiting for. And as they reach for each other and they actually hold hands, Chizuru starts crying tears of joy, and then boom, Kazuya wakes up. Of course this was a dream, he's never gonna get Chizuru. And this just matches up with chapter 380, where of course he gets rejected. So was this a beautiful dream or a nightmare? But soon enough, Kazuya is going to be in a living nightmare soon. That one is for the manga readers, because if you know, you know. And I'm just being a little harsher about the whole dream and nightmare and him never getting to Chizuru, because, you know, I expect them to get together at the end of the story, whenever that is. But still, it's clearly a metaphor of what's to come, especially with how it mirrors the recent manga developments, and of course the upcoming arc of the anime season. But that's the opening. I just wanted to go over it because it's such an awesome opening. I did not expect this level of quality for season 4, especially with this fantasy setting. And then if we look over to the internet, which is never the best thing to do, especially if you're a Rent-A-Girlfriend fan, but people online generally are really liking this opening, and I think it's one of the best ones of the season. I'm not gonna say it's the best, but it's a really good one. And then the song itself is a good song. It's not my favorite of the season. I don't think it's something I'm gonna be bopping in my car, but it's good. It matches the visuals very nicely. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't actually analyze all the lyrics to see how they match up with the visuals. I kind of didn't see any real correlation, but I do think that there was one standout line. But let's just go over all the lyrics. But don't worry, I won't be singing these. The song opens with its chorus: moonrise on these swaying and disappearing waves. I have written it many times. If I reach out my hand, I can reach it. What kind of sky are you looking at? Thoughts turn to the moon floating in the sea, the words exchanged. Of course, the reaching out hand is talking about how he can reach Chizuru, but I can't analyze the rest of the lyrics, but let's move on to the verse. Waiting at the end of the dream, your back blooming with the dignity, it seems like it will break if I touch it. You smiled and said, see you later. I ran off to catch up. My trembling small steps opened the door to your world that I don't know yet. Here's a line that stood out the most to me. Your back blooming with dignity, it seems like it would break if I touch it. That line says everything about Kazuya and Chizuru's dynamic ever since the ideal girlfriend speech. Because ever since that moment, Kazuya has been afraid to touch Chizuru, and he even mentioned it then that he was afraid to touch her because he imagined that she could break. And I've mentioned this in other videos, but that physical contact, that intimacy is really missing in their relationship. But let's move on with the lyrics. Your unexpected smile, emotional discord, my heart gently overlaps. These these lyrics once again feel like they coincide with the recent chapters. However, I can also think of an upcoming panel from the Paradise Hawaiians arc that this really just like connects with. And then funny enough, I think this is a panel that really broke the fanbase because this is one of the turning points for Chizuru. And I won't say anymore, I'll just leave it at that, and I'm sorry, I just want to make a proper Paradise arc analysis and I want to save it for that. So let's just finish the lyrics. The chorus repeats here, but there's a little change. Moonrise on these swaying and disappearing waves, I have written it many times. After I touch your hand, I start to change. What kind of me do you see? A memory begins, entrusting my feelings to the moon floating in the sea. And this is where the OP ends. There are more lyrics, but you know, they don't make it on the opening, so this is where I'll end it. And like I said, I did not have enough time to actually analyze the lyrics, so I'll leave the rest to you guys, so let me know what you guys find in the comments down below. And then the last thing I want to mention is Umi. He doesn't actually show up in the opening, it's just Kazuya just referring to him, but seeing everything else makes me wonder, is he gonna play a bigger role in the upcoming chapters? I mean, he's got some diabolical scenes coming up in this season, but you know, we'll get to that when we get to it. But still, it's an interesting thought. He's not really in the OP, he's not really in the Hawaiian arc, and he's not really present now. It's just something that Kazuya worries about, but he probably shouldn't because Umi is not really present. Like, you shouldn't really worry about it. He's never around. Damn, I think I just kind of ramble on there, but I think you guys get me, right? You guys get me? But as always, all my homies hate Umi. We all hate on Umi, guys. Get this guy out of here. But yeah, guys, that's everything I found and could analyze, but what did you guys think about the opening? I think it's gonna grab a lot of attention just for the fantasy, and you could just say isekai style visuals alone. It's so not Rent-a-Girlfriend, but that's what makes it work. The animation is fun, you get some fun symbolism out of it, and the vibe is something totally new for the series. So let me know what your favorite part was in the comments, and let me know who was your favorite princess. And if you made it this far into the video, don't forget to hit the like button, that would help me out so much. And why not subscribe and help me become the king of YouTube and get my queen Ruka, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching, I appreciate you. I hate recording in the summer.